100%.
Okay.
Crypto has never been as secure as it is today. And we have a clear path if we were to adopt some of these toolings and some of these mindset shifts to become even more secure. I say this to my colleagues, security is a really difficult fight right now for a variety of reasons. The rise of new AI technologies, like, of course, Anthropic's Mythos, which is very famous at the moment, or the rise of these quantum cryptography changes. But the reality is, crypto has never been more secure than it is today. So Immunefi is the world's largest on-chain security platform. We're responsible for protecting the vast majority of major on-chain applications. Think blockchains, think DeFi applications, think key and critical pieces of infrastructure in the on-chain economy. We're responsible for protecting them from the infinite world of threats and black hat hacking groups that are after them literally all the time. And we do that via a combination of methods, but primarily by leveraging the global security community to protect them for them. We create bug bounties, we create audit competitions, we create something called PR reviews that can take the world's best security researchers, the best white hat hackers, and have them hunt and find vulnerabilities before they can be found by the bad guys. And as a result, we end up protecting hundreds of billions of dollars every single year from theft by players like North Korea or other, malicious and criminal hacking groups around the globe. So that's a little bit about what we do.
Okay. So most security founders come from a technical role. What was your background?
Well, my background was not so technical, oddly enough. And I was an early builder in crypto and blockchain. So there's some technicality, I suppose, that comes with that. But my major interest, as you heard when we first met, is more in the realm of history.
Yeah.
History, philosophy, understanding how and why things came to be on the human side. And this is what brought me to this problem. I built a lot of stuff in the industry over the years, and I had experienced so many different cyber attacks, so many different crimes. I've seen SIM swapping attacks. I've had to intervene in SIM swapping attacks to protect tens of millions of dollars in people's fortunes. People that I knew, friends that I had. Okay. I've seen insider attacks where people were literally taking a wrench to a hard drive in order to obfuscate and steal mission critical IP that ended up being worth an absolute fortune. So I've seen that. I've seen attempted server break-ins of various kinds in order to steal large multi-tens of millions of dollars in raised funds. And I've seen, of course, countless numbers of North Korean hacking techniques, stalkings, attempted investigations into people, attempted scams, phishing, spear phishing, and everything in between. And it was that background combined with the love of history that brought me into security, because I realized at a certain point in 2019, 2020, that we had cracked the problem for making blockchains useful for society, that DeFi was really going to work, that this was a superior financial stratum, but it was also going to lead to an insane viral explosion of hacks and thefts. And if we didn't solve that problem very, very quickly, then all of our work in crypto would have been delegitimized before we even really had a chance to take off and show what we could offer society. Okay? Just like ICOs blew up, hacks were going to blow up in exactly the same way, except it would be really, really, really bad. And due to all this, I was like, okay, well, how do I prevent this? How do I solve this problem? What do I do to fix this? And I came to the conclusion that only something like Immunefi could stand a chance at hardening and protecting the global on-chain infrastructure fast enough for us to resist this coming wave of hacks. And so that's what we did. So not a technical background per se, technical problem set. I was more just given all the trash, all the ugly problems, all the messes. And then I had, to spin that. And
it sounds very specialized, though. Sounds very specialized. Like it's and project based as well. Everyone is different.
Yes.
I did some research and I found that your data shows 94% of bug bounty programs active 5 years or longer have found at least one critical vulnerability. What is a critical vulnerability and what does that actually say?
So there's two ways to look at it. Programs define critical vulnerabilities how they want, but at Immunefi, we have a standardized system for looking at critical vulnerabilities that applies to most. And in most cases, a critical vulnerability is going to be a vulnerability that could lead to theft of funds of significant or material amounts. So think hundreds of thousands, millions, tens of hundreds of millions of dollars, this kind of thing. Or a system that would compromise the underlying infrastructure or platform in such a way that it makes it unusable and causes downstream financial damage. So a good example of that is, destroying consensus or manipulating block construction on a major blockchain such that it compromises the whole system and all the products and protocols and smart contracts that are built on it. There are other types of criticals, but these are the big two buckets that we're thinking of. And so when you're looking at that data and you're looking at 90, was it 93, 94%?
90, yeah.
Right. What we're talking about is, 9 in 10 of these protocols are going to have discovered a critical vulnerability so severe that it could effectively destroy their business over the course of running a bug bounty program on Immunefi. That's what we're talking about. It's kind of fatal or catastrophic events. It's like the movie Armageddon from the
Yes,
90s.
I saw it
It's like
many
the
times.
meteor is coming, right? Like
Yes.
that's what a critical vulnerability is.
So the asteroid is the critical vulnerability, not the space shuttle, going through all that it goes through.
No, we are the space shuttle. Okay.
Okay.
We are the
Interesting
space shuttle.
example.
You send us out to do your dirty work to protect the planet, the global white hat community, except you got like 1,000 spaceships and you're throwing them at these asteroids and praying that they're going to, veer off course and bring
Yeah,
you down,
of course.
which we do very successfully over and over and over again.
Okay,
Okay.
so it's not as dramatic, let's say, as Armageddon, but here is it every 5 years that you're gonna have a critical vulnerability?
No, 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 no. It's much more frequent than that.
Much more frequent than 5 years.
That's correct. That data was only that over 5 years, almost every program is going to surface that kind of threat. But if we look at any given year, the odds of a critical vulnerability occurring in any given year to any one of my customers is around 40 to 45%.
In a
Okay.
given year. Wow.
Yeah. So you flip a coin, and in a given year, you're going to know if you have the Armageddon asteroid coming at you or not.
Okay, so I have a lot of questions, but this one's really so sort of what's the point of having a blockchain with so many critical vulnerabilities?
That's a great point. What's the point of having an internet with so many critical vulnerabilities?
Is there an internet though? Do you have this type of stuff? I mean, it's all linked, I think, with what
Of
you're
course,
saying.
the internet is an incredibly insecure piece of technology.
Interesting.
The original internet was not designed to be a secure system, and it showed from the beginning. You had all sorts of problems. The internet is like this kind of ugly patchwork of systems that like it's constructed in many different layers, and every one of these layers was prioritizing or optimizing for a different set of constraints. And none of those layers were optimizing for security from the beginning. Okay, it was not designed to be a secure system. That's why we have a huge cybersecurity industry. That's why we had to create new forms of payments, and why payments didn't work very well in the early internet. That's why communication on the internet is kind of inherently insecure. That's why data flows kind of, the server structure of the internet makes it so that your data is always getting collected by everybody. There's another version of the internet that could have been constructed where every user kind of constrains or owns their own data in such a way that you couldn't have massive data pools or massive data lakes that would compromise end users. That's not the one we got, although those things have been designed. We got the one that was maximally easy to set up and communicate with, but is highly insecure, or was highly insecure. So, why is the internet worth anything despite that? It's like, of course, it's a phenomenal piece of technology that's changed the world, and we all tolerate the insecurity, just like we tolerate the insecurity of, problematic highways or public infrastructure or mediocre ports because they benefit so much more than they cost. And it's the same for blockchains, right? The nature of code up until right now, when it's starting to change, but the nature of software up until right now is there's always going to be vulnerabilities. There's always going to be gaps. There's always going to be bugs in your code. You can't make foolproof code because it's not economically feasible to do so for almost everybody. And as a result of that, you're just going to have to tolerate a certain amount of insecurity like you do in the rest of life. Now, I think that the difference is blockchains are mission critical systems for money. And we all have very low tolerance for the money in our bank account vanishing overnight. Although that also happens to some banks, not infrequently. So it's the thing that happens, you just don't notice it. Having said that, it's unavoidable until we crack the future of software development, which we are working on right now, Andrew, actually. And we may solve over the next few years, which is very exciting. But until we do that, we have no choice but to tolerate some insecurity in our software, just like we do on every other piece of software, from your bank stuff to your government stuff to your personal finance records to your passport. They all have this problem shared in common.
So you can't stop bugs, is what you're saying, but you can maybe get faster at finding them.
Yes, I think something like that's correct, but there's a caveat. It's more like historically, you can't stop bugs. And the best way to stay safe historically has been to get faster at finding them. Okay. Now we're moving into a future where that might no longer be true, in the sense that what if you can find the bugs so fast and so deeply that effectively you can prevent them from ever getting into production? And this possibility may come to life over the next few years. But this is the cutting edge of security, the cutting edge, the holy grail of software development, which up until today, Andrew, we have not begun to enjoy.
No.
We have not seen, we have not existed in. But we're beginning to see that it could be. And the example for that is as follows. Most audits that happen in crypto, most code review, and every piece of code, every piece of on-chain or blockchain code is reviewed because of how sensitive these systems are. Is usually reviewed by between 2 and 5 people. Okay. And this results in a huge increase in the security properties of this code by getting extra eyeballs. Every additional eyeball adds another layer of value. It's like we have a big watchtower, and you're going to have, instead of one guy just staring off, getting tired, dozing into the distance, we're going to have 2 to 5 guys there. And it makes an incredible difference in seeing what kind of threats or what's going on in the distance, because you have 5 eyes, or 5 pairs of eyes rather, instead of 2. Now, what we can do today, what we've been able to do, is what if we could put 1,000 eyes on it?
Like CCTV is almost what you're saying.
Better than CCTV. 1,000 different kinds of eyes. 1,000 different types of cameras and CCTVs and sensor technologies, all working together in conjunction.
I mean, is this for blockchain? So for example, Bitcoin's been running, since 2009, 2010. So does this logic apply here? Is Bitcoin, does it have a potential for a critical vulnerability?
Of course. And this has happened several times in the history of Bitcoin.
Okay.
There have been various double spends and mint vulnerabilities found in the Bitcoin blockchain, some of which ended up being dormant for years and years and years. Which
This
is
is
scary.
2010, no? That happened.
Also 2017.
2017. Okay, so what happened then?
I have to go back on the case, but there was a vulnerability found a few years ago about a report found a few years ago about a vulnerability introduced in 2017, 2018.
Yeah.
That, as far as we can tell, lied completely dormant in the code up until it was found in the mid 2020s or the early 2020s.
Scary. That's scary.
Yes, yes.
Was it?
Double spend.
It was along the lines of the Zcash. What Zcash went through?
No, the Zcash vulnerability was actually much more tame. This was much more severe than the Zcash vulnerability.
Okay.
The Zcash vulnerability allowed you to effectively create fake money, but only in a shielded pool. And what this did was basically said, the risk, the potential damage is contained to the total amount of assets in the shielded pool. But Bitcoin doesn't work that way. And so in any kind of, double spend scenario, you effectively have to ask whether all the money, all Bitcoin is compromised. And how can you even know if it's being activated on the outside? So the entire kind of value of the chain is at risk from these types of things, which is why they're considered so dangerous.
Okay, so to like, because a lot of stuff was said now. So maybe just going back to what you said about, the improvement that you're seeing, that soon critical vulnerabilities is going to be reduced.
Yes,
Um,
yes.
what is the link to Bitcoin now, and maybe other projects that you might be working on?
Yeah, I mean, the link for Bitcoin is the same as it is for all. I mean, we're on the frontier of protecting the on-chain economy comprehensively. Almost every major project works with Immunefi. Almost every piece of interesting on-chain frontier tech runs a program or an audit competition of some kind with Immunefi because they all understand this risk. Okay, everybody knows that vulnerabilities are a normal and expected property of your software, of the code that you write today. Okay. And crowdsourced security mechanisms like the ones we described, like the ones we offer, are the most effective way of surfacing those vulnerabilities for a variety of different reasons. So I would say like that's the link. Like if you're a practitioner in this field, you don't assume that you can make secure systems. You assume that whatever code you write will be insecure by default. And how do you find all the economically feasible vulnerabilities as quickly as you can before they can be found by bad guys? Like that's the calculus. That's what you're doing, and that's our primary job. The whole industry comes to us to solve that problem for them.
Okay, I just have one question, then I'll move on, and then I'll move on to my others. But from the way you described it, so a bug goes back to the machine, no? And they would literally have a bug, an insect inside that machine, which would not work correctly.
Yes.
You're saying that in modern day software, we can engineer security that removes the risk of a bug in the form of like going back to an
Mm-hmm.
insect. Like you can even get that clean in the software.
Mm-hmm. Definitely.
You can be
Absolutely.
there. Okay. That's good. Then that's good. I think that's good. So, okay, you have led dozens of war rooms. Can you walk me through what a war room is and what one actually looks like?
Sure. So for everybody who doesn't know, a war room is what we call when we're dealing with a potential hack scenario or we're dealing with a potential breach. And in crypto, we call them war rooms because you say, okay, everybody out. There's something terrible and critical that's happening right now. We need to go and solve this problem. And the way it runs is as follows: you're minding your own business, and then suddenly you get an alert, probably on the world's most annoying application, PagerDuty, but potentially on something else. And your phone starts blasting and blasting. It's like volume max and the shrilliest, ugliest noise you've ever heard. And you know right then and there that you need to get into action. You don't know if this is a critical vulnerability disclosure that a white hat made, but you have to fix it ASAP. You don't know if somebody found something suspicious, but they're not sure what it is. You don't know if you've been hacked and you're being alerted after the fact.
Yeah.
Whatever it is, you need to head to your computer. You need to find out what's going on. So that's the first step that goes on. And once you do that, you're going to get pulled into the war room proper. It's probably going to be a Google Hangouts meeting or a Zoom meeting or something equivalent, and we're just throwing everybody in there to figure out what's going on with this situation. So you jump in like everybody else, and you're going to be getting your sit rep. Okay.
Uh,
Now, I'm sorry. Go ahead. Go ahead, Andrew.
no, no, I'm following you. Like, 'cause I'm assuming, you're going about your day, and you have a special laptop or a special phone that
Yep.
vibrates, and now it's like, okay, something serious happened. I have to stop everything that I'm doing, and you're all of a sudden in this Google Meet, and you have this blockchain person and that one, and you're all talking about what just happened.
Exactly. And everybody's scared out of their minds, unless you're experienced, because
Well,
it's like,
it's
am I
scary.
about to lose all my equity? Right? Everything I've been working for years, am I about to lose it all? Maybe.
Yeah, which is the worry of DeFi, no?
Yes, 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 absolutely. And by the way, most of these things are timed because attackers are clever to happen when everybody is sleeping. So the ideal, war room time ends up being like 4 a.m. your time, whenever that is.
Uh, so you
Okay.
get a nice morning. Alarm clock.
If it's a hack. If it's not a hack, you get it at a more reasonable time. But if it's a hack, you get the world's worst, most traumatizing alarm clock. You'll never forget it for the rest of your life.
I can imagine.
Now you jump in the room. Now, most teams struggle at this and they fumble it. People freeze, they get stuck. Good operators, people who've done this before, like myself, we have a plan. First thing we do is we start setting roles and responsibilities. We say who's going to be the operator or the operations lead, aka the commander. Who's going to be the analyst is going to figure out the technical considerations about what exactly happened, because you're going to have to do like a detective. You have to go to the crime scene and figure out what's going on, how did it work, or like a doctor, how do we stop the bleeding here, how do we prevent this from getting worse. And then you need someone on comms who's going to go and manage community sentiment, because if you can solve whatever this worm is, but then if you end up bumbling the communications, you could end up destroying all your legitimacy and public market confidence anyways, which is the worst, right? You prevent the hack and then you still are abandoned by all your users because you fumbled the comms, because everybody's afraid of such things.
Credibility, as well.
Right.
Yeah.
So you got to divide the roles real fast, and then you got to send everybody else to do their job. So the ops lead begins planning and sequencing. How are we going to be structuring this? The comms lead begins drafting all the material. And finally, your technical analysts get to work trying to do root cause analysis on what actually happened. You guys check in periodically on a timer, on a schedule, or until they find the solution to whatever the problem is. And then every checkpoint, you and the whole team, which should be ideally as few people as possible, convene to plan out the next steps and figure out what you need to do next. And you do this over and over and over and over and over again until you can find out exactly what the root cause of the threat is and how you can mitigate it before your users are robbed and your system is broken and shattered.
Crazy.
Okay? And this can go on for days, by the way. It usually doesn't. Usually it takes hours. But it can go on for days. I had a case with the primitive finance war room, and that one took about 72 hours. That was my whole weekend, because of course it happened on a Friday night, and I ended up doing it until Monday evening.
Crazy.
Okay?
So what happens then in these situations is what you get told, like 100 million drained or 25 million drained, and you're like, okay, and then you go about the process how you just explained. Is it that?
Well, it can be. Sometimes the situation is better than that. Sometimes we got a critical vulnerability report from a great white hat, and we know it's real. We know we're vulnerable right now. We know someone could steal 100 million from us right now. How do we fix this as soon as possible?
Which makes him a white hat actor, not a black hat actor, correct?
Exactly. Those are my favorite war rooms, because we're going to win. But then it's still a war room because you're in a race against time to see if someone will hack it first. And I've done many war rooms like that. Many, because we've handled thousands of critical vulnerability disclosures at Immunefi, more than everybody else combined. Okay, Andrew? Almost everything like this has flown through us historically in the industry.
Crazy.
It is nuts. And we've had cases where, as we are moving towards the fix, we see black hat activity on chain. We see someone testing the same vulnerability we're trying to fix. And we're like, shit, if we don't move fast, they're going to steal all the money. This happens.
I mean, it leads me to my next question. So the Kelp DAO hack in April, one forged message through one verifier, 292 million gone. That was not a code bug. It was a configuration choice. So does a bug bounty program even catch something like that?
Yes, absolutely.
Yes, it does. Okay.
Yeah.
So then what's...
Because you're mixing up bugs and vulnerabilities.
Exactly. So a critical vulnerability always refers to a bug.
No.
No.
A bug and a vulnerability are not exactly the same thing, right? A bug can be the system. We call them the same thing for convenience, and they're mostly the same. They're almost always the same, but they're not the same things. They're not equivocal. So a bug is any time when your system, your logic, doesn't work as you intended. Okay? But the bug can be harmless. It can be not a vulnerability at all. right? It can just be something broken that goes nowhere. You have bugs all the time when you go outside on your lawn or in your property, and like the gate's stuck, but it's stuck in a way that it's jammed, and you're like, well, nobody's getting through here. There's no vulnerability there, but you got a bug with your gate.
Okay.
Whereas a vulnerability is there's a way that your system can be misused to cause harm in some way, okay, or can be taken advantage of, and like there's lots of different ways you can imagine a vulnerability working, but even intentionally made design choices, right? That you architected your system somewhere. Like we believe that gates should be designed so that someone can reach over the top and open it. And even though they designed it intentionally like that, that's still a vulnerability because someone can compromise the security of the system very trivially. That's the difference with a vulnerability versus a bug. So they're not the same thing. And so a configuration choice, as you said, can be a vulnerability, even if it's an intentional design choice. Because it could be like, hey, why are you choosing to leave the bank vault open and unattended? Are you sure that's wise? Right? And in this case, it was a vulnerability.
And in this case, it was a vulnerability. So were you involved in this at all? No.
Well,
Uh,
not really. Kelp was not our customer.
no. Okay. Okay. So you have risks that you don't know exist.
Mm-hmm.
This has been discussed about in Bitcoin, as well. Risks that we don't know might exist, that we don't even know them for certain. Um,
Well, the risks exist because probabilistically, the likelihood of you having a completely secure system is basically zero.
is it
So
for everyone though?
yes, for everyone. So you
Exactly.
can take the flip side. You can be like, well, I don't know what risks I have, but I know by virtue of the probabilities that I have a near certain likelihood of having severe risks that I am vulnerable to, even if I don't recognize them.
So I mean, if it's raining outside, I have a risk of getting wet, but I have to go outside. If I'm in the house, then I'm never gonna get wet, kind of thing.
No, you could still
Uh,
get wet. It would just be much harder.
I mean, okay, so that's the way you guys think. It's like people will go on a ladder, climb up, and just throw some water at you whilst you're walking, because because it's a bug that your balcony has the door open, for example.
I think we live in a slightly different world from the rest of society in this regard, Andrew, where in our world, there's a whole legion of cyber attackers. And these are nation states, right? Obviously, North Korea is famous for funding its budget this way, but there are hundreds of hacking groups that are effectively startups, kind of criminal startups, who make money by robbing or hacking or scamming people in various kinds of ways. So we live in a world with the on-chain economy that is flooded with bearer assets that are easy to move, easy to clean, and impossible to easily kind of track down and halt due to the nature of these distributed systems. And where sophisticated attackers can use that for the purposes of making vast incomes. We live in a world where those incentives are already there. So it's not just that you're like, oh, you might get wet if you go outside. It's that there's a bunch of people who are looking constantly for the opportunity to shower you with water because someone is going to give them a huge payday
Exactly,
if
because they
they
got
do.
paid to do the other way around. Which is where the bug bounty gets its word from. Bug bounty. That's they're getting paid to catch a bug.
That's right. Or they're getting paid to find and disclose vulnerabilities.
Exactly. So if you get the call at whatever time in the morning
Mhm.
and you're either dealing with a white hat or a black hat, A,
Mhm.
do you even know? How do you even know? So it's like, yes, he told you or she told you, listen, there's this vulnerability. But how do you know they're not draining it at the same time? How do you know they're not a bad actor wearing a white hat? The question is this: if you have negotiated directly with international hackers for the return of stolen funds, how does that conversation start? And what's it like to be in?
Sure. I've done this a few times, Andrew. Well, number one, most people in this situation are not white hats or black hats. They are gray hats.
Hmm.
And what this is, in my view, something like 80% of the security hacker community are people with strong codes, moral codes, but their moral codes are very idiosyncratic. They're very particular to them. Okay. They have their own code that they follow. And that includes looking out for them as number one. They have ethics too, but their ethics might not be aligned with yours. And they want to make some money. And so what they're going to do is going to depend on how much money they can make here and how aligned it is with whatever code that they have. Okay. There are some white hats who will almost invariably do what is social, pro-social. And we work with all of them at Immunefi. Great guys. We like lots of phenomenal people there. And then there's plenty of real cyber criminals, real black hats that are just going to rob you and never try and support you. And we've dealt with a lot of those guys too. There are our enemies that we're in a forever war with, really. But the gray hats make up the voluminous middle. Okay. Now, negotiating with these guys is complicated. It's complicated. They tend to be extreme personalities. Most security people tend to have extreme personalities, myself included. I'm an eccentric character. We all are. Now, these guys at the same time, number one, they're thinking about the money because that's obvious and important. And the amounts of money that you could make in this type of activity are life-changing, truly life-changing. Millions, tens of millions, hundreds of millions of dollars, the biggest heists in the history of mankind outside of central bankers themselves. So, it's like a real life-changing opportunity. At the same time, they understand the risks. A lot of these guys have a background or familiarity with the underworld in various forms. And so they know that this is not a safe place to be. There's lots of ways they can get caught. And if they don't do this properly, there's going to be someone following them for the rest of their lives. They're going to put a target on their back forever, both from law enforcement, but also potentially from other criminal groups who could also be tracking them to steal the money from them.
Who is taking who from where as well.
Exactly. So it's not safe, right? You're a pirate, you steal from a Spanish galleon, but the other pirates may well come after you. This is not a safe line of work. Okay. Now that they know you got 100 million in your pocket. And so they're open to other solutions. And a lot of them have a lot of pride. They want to be respected. Adulation, admiration, and respect are worth a fortune to most people if it's constructed in the right form. And so there's some combination of these that we have to combine and recombine together in order to get to a deal that convinces gray hats to come and work with us instead of the black hats, and to disclose and become white hats in some form rather than harm society in an unpleasant and uncredible way. And if we can get that right, where the bounties are big enough, like we're not going to give you the 100 million, but maybe we'll give you a million. Maybe we'll give you 5 million. Maybe we'll give you 10 million.
Still a lot.
Okay? It's still a lot. It's still life-changing money.
Yeah.
You can still retire. Like you make $10 million in cash, as some of our white hats have done. Like, fuck off and go retire and relax for the rest of your life if you want. That's amazing. Congratulations.
Mm-hmm.
But some combination of money, material money, but also respect will help you build a career, will make you famous, will connect you to new financial opportunities. You can become a security expert. We've made lots of great hackers famous in crypto. All the best white hats, almost all of them, I should say, have been made famous by Immunefi. Okay? And will give you respect. And the negotiations, a lot of the time, that's what they need. They understand they did something very, very clever. But are they appreciated? Right? And do they appreciate that there's a balance, there's a deal that can be struck here? Do they feel safe enough to deal that you can get this over the line? So these are the kinds of things you have to be thinking about in navigating this. It's not a heavy-handed conversation. Some teams try that, but they just end up alienating both white hats and black hats, for that matter. You need to be diplomatic because these guys have power. They have real power over you, and they decide your fate and your destiny. And you should be considerate in how you handle them.
Yeah, I can imagine. So are you like the hostage negotiator here as
Sometimes.
such? Sometimes.
Sometimes I was actually requested to mediate exactly such a situation today between a non-Immunefi protocol and a hacker in dispute over one of these cases. So, like, are we the hostage negotiators? Yeah, you could think of it that way. You could also think of us as the crisis mediators, right, or the hostage mediators, because that's more of the job. Is there a way we can get this deal to the right location, that we can make it kind of win-win for both people, which is how we think about everything that we do? We perform that function. But even more than that, Andrew, we're the clearinghouse for vulnerabilities. So it's not just that we do the mediation of the hostage negotiation, which we do, but it's that we facilitate, we set up the market and the environment for these transactions and these discussions to happen at all. Without us, they would not happen. And it would not be possible to resolve many of these cases. And that would lead to a lot more hacks and a lot more damage to society.
Yeah. So how many companies are there like Immunefi?
Oh, there have been a variety of bug bounty platforms over the world. Most large countries will have at least one, and then the larger countries may have multiple. Of course, in the United States you have several. And then in crypto, there's probably 5 or 6 major players, with the caveat that Immunefi owns the majority of the market today. We're larger than all of our competitors combined.
Interesting.
It's kind of like a winner take all environment, power law
Yeah.
structured.
Interesting. Okay, I have a question, but before I get to this, I just want to go back and touch on what you said that in a few years' time, X dot dot dot, with regards to security. So in a few years' time, how do you see the war room playing out?
Well, I think it becomes very different in a few years' time. It's hard for me to predict. Like, I know how security changes in a few years' time because I'm building that future where we're solving the problems before we ship the code into production. And that's going to be the biggest thing, because there's a chance for us to prevent 99% of war rooms before they even start. But even so, even in that world, there's still going to be some war rooms. It's impossible to prevent all war rooms because our systems are not deterministic, and they're going to have unexpected, unpredictable vulnerabilities or assumptions that end up being violated and then need to be solved. In that sense, the only sense that I can think of war rooms changing really materially is twofold. Number one, they get harder, in the sense that international cooperation between law enforcement and states continues to break down. And cyber vigilantism and cyber letters of marque increase, leading to a much more hostile internet. And so, in that sense, you have much more hostile attackers with fewer and fewer types of recourse for law-abiding players, which kind of gives you this shadow run. Do you ever remember the game Shadowrun?
No, never heard of
Uh,
it before.
Google it. It's a hilarious, world building concept. It's like
It's a movie.
fantasy.
It's a movie. What is it?
No, it was a tabletop game, and
Game.
then they
Okay.
created some video games out of it, RPGs, and it's like fantasy mixes with cyberpunk science fiction. So, for example, you have dragons and they're hackers. You have hacker dragons, and it's hilarious. But you have this kind of environment where, I mean, it's a very dystopian world where there are these mega corporations that have their own effective cyber armies that are competing with one another and with states directly. And we're going into a world that is getting more and more similar to that. Okay?
Which is not ideal.
All right. No.
No.
It's not ideal, but the last world wasn't ideal either. So what's the main difference in that regard?
No, and technology is getting more complicated. Full stop.
Right.
You know what
Right.
I
Right.
mean? Uh,
But that's one way things are changing. And so in that way, war rooms are intensifying while they become less rare. They're becoming more intense and more hostile. And my other thing is, I think they'll become a lot more automatic. I think, like, over the last few years, you needed someone like me and my colleagues, for example, all the amazing people in SEAL 9/11, to go and do this, because war rooming was a very niche skill and very few people had the experience and the know-how and the knowledge to deal with these situations. And I no longer think that's true. I think I could encompass most of my war rooming expertise into a great, AI prompt and have it do 90% of the thing, or could I at least give all of the direction. It couldn't give the moral support or the courage or the good judgment, but it could give, the playbook. And in that way, things will also change, I think.
Okay, so how does Bitcoin's security model look to you from where you sit?
Brittle, I would say. In some ways, Bitcoin is an incredible security system, I would say, because it has so much power and so much, belief and vested interest that there's hundreds of people, hundreds of hackers who are trying to protect the Bitcoin blockchain by working with Bitcoin Core and others to find vulnerabilities and assess them. But of course, the other thing is, over the last few years, the Bitcoin community as an organization, so to speak, as a society, has really become more and more ossified, and that's been part of their value prop that they've been pushing about, making the code more and more slow or frozen, and focusing on being the store of value type of asset. And as a result of this, changes have been coming slower and slower and slower to the Bitcoin blockchain. And this is becoming an increasing problem in the context of quantum computation, which is going to necessitate wholesale swap outs of big portions of the cryptography and the code in the Bitcoin blockchain, just as it will with Ethereum and other blockchains, right?
So,
And the timelines are getting shorter and shorter for how people think about quantum computation. Like, aggressive timelines are looking like 2030, 2032, which is not long to solve those problems.
But quantum is not a bug.
No, but
it's like a leap in technology that.
But it creates a vulnerability. It's not a bug.
No, exactly. Okay, definitely a critical vulnerability.
Right. Caesar's cipher works
once it's made, once it's built.
What? Yeah, the tricky part is like, how will you know, of course, once it's built, because it's going to be used like a very funny weapon. But I think that is this is one example of the brittleness becoming a liability. You can think of the Bitcoin security posture as being like the Great Wall of China, okay? Or better yet, more like being like the Byzantine walls of Constantinople. Are you familiar with the story of the Constantinople walls?
It's the Byzantine fault tolerance problem, no? That fixed.
No, different. The Byzantine fault tolerance problem, I believe, is about the Byzantine generals having to communicate with each other.
Attacking the castle. At
Right,
the same
and
time.
knowing that there are traitors in their midst. How do you work with that?
Exactly.
But the Constantinopolitan walls are different. So Constantinople, of course, was the capital of the Byzantine Empire, where modern-day Istanbul is. And it was the greatest city in the world for a long time. And it had the 3 layers of incredible walls that kept out attackers over and over and over again. And it was a very powerful defense, but it was very brittle because it was a huge city. And so if those walls were compromised, then the defense can unravel very, very quickly. Okay. You were basically betting that your outer walls could not be breached. And this is different from, say, how castles are constructed. Castles have different layers of walls where you assume that different layers will be breached. Okay. But then you bet that they won't be able to get to the next one and the next one and the next one. Whereas in Constantinople, that was not the case. You have 3 layers of walls in the front, and if those are compromised, you're done.
Because then the enemy would storm.
Yes, whatever. And there's no way to stop them from storming the rest of the city. And if you're outnumbered, they will inevitably encircle you and defeat you.
Okay, so you think that Bitcoin has this slow security model to it. And because it's so slow, some updates that you think should be made aren't being made. What's the...
I would say because it's so slow, it makes it difficult for it to be adaptive. It makes it difficult for it to upgrade its security assumptions and to improve proactively its security posture. because it's so slow, the default approach in the Bitcoin community is to be reactive. And to be reactive, given what's coming, is a great disadvantage. It is a great disadvantage. In the world of 10 years ago, Andrew, in the world before the rise of both, LLMs as cybersecurity tools and the acceleration of quantum computing, in that world, the Bitcoin security model is extremely effective, I think, because the economics of attackers favors them. But in the world that we're going into, where no vulnerability will remain unfound if you throw enough compute, if you throw enough money at the problem, and where the pace of quantum computation as a known vulnerability category is accelerating in its proximity to us, in that world, suddenly this slowness becomes a real liability. So it's like they built the Maginot Line, okay, to protect them against the last war. But we're not going to fight the last war. The next few years is not about the last war. The next few years is not World War I, it's World War II.
It's true. Though Valletta withstood, the tax, and it's still there. 300 years later, 400 years later, we're enjoying it every day. Huh?
Valletta in Malta and the Knights.
Yes.
Yes, of course, the Knights of Malta. So look, you can do it. I mean, they figured it out, right? Legendary.
No, it's just a thought, because we're talking about history. I'm not saying that's the case. But what I wanted to say, okay, so SHA-256 is pretty indestructible from what I've come across, and it's the critical vulnerability of Bitcoin is sort of protected by SHA-256 in the wallet technology, or like storing your money, unless you spend from it. And if you spend from that wallet, you open the door and you no longer have that lock kind of thing. So do you still think that with at least that security, it's brittle?
Yes, of course. Because the brittleness is a social property, not a technical property, right? And SHA-256 is an amazing cryptographic technology. But the whole concern, for example, around quantum cryptography, is that even the leading traditional cryptographic methods are going to be vulnerable and compromisable for some advanced quantum decryption technologies. We don't know that to be true, to be fair, Andrew. Like, this is still cutting edge frontier tech. This is what's hypothesized and expected, but it's not known. So that may not end up being the case, and something like SHA-256 may not be compromisable by this tech when we get to that future world. That's a possibility, but we don't know, and a variety of players think that it will be compromisable. And that's why, like, the brittleness remains no matter what form of cryptography Bitcoin uses. It could be the very, very best in the world. When we're looking at a step change in the system that invalidates the entire older stack, it no longer matters that you were using best in class of the old system. And a good example of this, again, going to the Maginot Line example, is the French fought with their tanks alongside their infantry formations, as I'm sure you're aware, right?
Oh, I wasn't aware, actually.
Okay, well then, fun little like armored
knowledge
strategy doctrines. But in World War II, they fought the same way they did World War I, which is tanks walk alongside the infantry, and they act as kind of moving pillboxes or moving bunkers, and they helped basically break over trenches and allow them to penetrate enemy lines. The Germans used tanks in a completely different way. They used tanks more as armored cavalry. They said, we're going to separate infantry from the tanks, okay? Or what infantry that goes with tanks is going to be mobile infantry. And we're going to give them as much fuel as they can, and we're going to send them to spearhead straight through enemy lines. Their goal is not even to engage. It's to demolish the idea of a static trench warfare line at all and go straight for encirclements or for key objectives and destinations. And as a result of that, when the Germans invaded over the Ardennes forest in, I forgot what the name of the operation was where they invaded France. But when they went through the forest, it was an absolute coup and an absolute shock. And even though the French had just as many tanks and great tanks too, they had amazing technology, and the Maginot Line was very effective. It really worked to block lots of things. Even though they had all those advantages, the use of tanks as kind of mobile cavalry forces completely invalidated, and they ended up encircling, a million men, stretching out into Belgium, and that ended up leading to the rapid decline and surrender of the French Republic. It was that use of tanks that was the same tool, the same technology, and the same amounts, but used in a different way, that made all the difference.
Because they separated them from the primary. Okay,
From the
so what's the
move
logic here?
so they could adapt much faster to what's happening on the ground. That's the same challenge we have in security today. We're in a world where we need to be able to adapt very quickly in order to succeed in our hostile environment. And we're no longer in a world we're not in a world where being extremely slow is a competitive advantage or a security advantage. We're moving towards a world where being fast and proactive is a security advantage, because the technologies are changing so fast and they're so widely available that if you don't adapt fast, they introduce whole new classes of vulnerabilities that you simply could not have predicted 1 or 2 or 3 years prior to that. And that's why you need to be adaptive. And that's why non-adaptiveness becomes brittleness.
Yes. I mean, it's hard for me to see that perspective, with so much because it seems like you're really sure that in 3 years' time something's gonna happen that will expose maybe Bitcoin's brittlety.
Not necessarily.
No. So
I think
I
this is
didn't
a
read that.
solvable problem. I think this is a straightforwardly solvable problem, because it's a social and political problem, Andrew. It's not a technical problem.
Okay, so it's good that I separate that. So the what you're talking about right now is not the technicalities of the layer one, for example. It's the social. Okay, so what's the social bug problem, I
The
guess?
social bug is if someone has a vision for how to improve the security of the Bitcoin blockchain, such as by doing, large-scale cryptography form swap outs, or by instituting new security procedures or new security infrastructure to support the Bitcoin blockchain, such as use of a bug bounty, which they still don't use today, which is totally backwards. How would they do that? How could they even achieve that? The very kind of slow to adapt, deliberately resistant to change, total decentralization ethos of Bitcoin makes it very difficult to take advantage of best-in-class security tools and techniques.
What would you change though? What would you contribute to the scene that needs
Well,
discussion?
I think I would do a few things. I mean, number one, I would solve the quantum cryptography problem by creating kind of an open alliance with the other major blockchain players. Like the Ethereum guys and every other blockchain has to solve this problem to survive. There's no need for anyone to work alone on this problem. You can ride everybody else's coattails, so to speak. And so by creating a very, very large working group on how to best do this, people are going to end up choosing their own solutions, but you're going to have a front row seat and you're going to maximize the chance that you find a solution before something bad happens. But that requires a little bit of centralization, right? That requires some coordination. That requires some resources. But that's the thing. That's one of the things to do to deal with that problem. Put yourself at the cutting edge of R&D in quantum cryptography, which right now, I don't know, how close we are to that today. Number two, I would look at basically empowering some highly trusted organizations to act as if they were security players. So we've created this open and decentralized market, which is amazing and it's good, but we should probably be empowering certain centralized actors with certain privileges in order to protect the system. And then we should constrain those privileges so that there's no risk of anyone kind of acquiring too much power or acting outside of the very limited purview. But within those limits, they are doing a good job, right? So for example, by running best-in-class security tooling, by using stuff like Immunefi's technology, to put 1,000 security researchers to review every single new commit that is considered for the Bitcoin blockchain. Like, that's a no-brainer, but nobody does that today, even though the value is so obvious.
So then who would you speak to for a centralized actor?
I don't know. I mean, that's part of the problem. I mean, you probably have to go back to the miners and Bitcoin Core.
Like Azad, I was going to say, is this core, basically? Are you referring to the developers or are you referring to the miners?
I think you have to do both, because you need the money and you need the kind of like the permission, so to speak, and the legitimacy. You can't do this stuff effectively without the legitimacy of Bitcoin Core, but it costs real money to do this. Okay.
And is the result of that a change in the technicals or a change in what? What, like,
The inevitable result of that becomes technical improvement. Yes.
exactly. Okay, comes technical improvement.
But it also becomes a shift in the social consensus around security for Bitcoin, because you shift from a purely reactive stance to saying, hey, we have a Department of Defense for Bitcoin, basically, that is proactively looking for how we can survive and grow into the future. Okay. And we accept that. We accept some amount of centralization and some amount of resource allocation, like we do for Bitcoin Core, for the purposes of enhancing and improving and extending the security of the system.
Yeah. So
and that's not part of the conversation today.
No, exactly. Maybe it will get there, you know? I mean, it's only 16, 17 years old, you know? Like, things have to happen to then happen, you know what I mean? All right, so I'll just maybe have this last question for you. So who is actually finding these critical bugs? Is it a small group of people, or like, is there a whole industry that nobody knows about in the hacking world? Like, were there a lot of people doing this?
A whole industry, hundreds
Industry.
of thousands of people around the world. Now, there is a power law distribution. So a few hundred to about 1,000 guys do the vast majority of value creation on Immunefi, for example. Okay. But there's a few 100,000 to, 1 million, 2 million people around the world who contribute to this economy. And billions and billions and billions of dollars are flowing through this economy every year. Immunefi handles around, we paid out about almost $140 million in cash bounties for the most part. But we are one player. In the global scheme of things, you have a lot more. And then, of course, you have a variety of intelligence agencies. There's a lot of agencies around the world that might be paying $5 or $10 million vulnerability as well. So you have a whole shadow economy here that operates on this. And we are the ones who are trying to bring as much of this into the light as we can, so that it can only serve society in our way. And in our corner of the world, we're like, we have the blockchain security community, a few thousand people who are basically carrying the entire industry on their shoulders.
Yeah, I can imagine. Okay, so final question. I think we discussed a little bit, but I'm just curious to end on this, just to get your thoughts. So as this industry continues to grow and more people start coming in, is it actually getting more secure?
100%.
Okay.
Crypto has never been as secure as it is today. And we have a clear path, if we were to adopt some of these toolings and some of these mindset shifts, to become even more secure. I say this to my colleagues, security is a really difficult fight right now for a variety of reasons. The rise of new AI technologies, like, of course, Anthropic's Mythos, which is very famous at the moment, or the rise of these quantum cryptography changes. But the reality is, crypto has never been more secure than it is today. We have never had better security practices than we do today. Our security practices are much better than the traditional internet. Our security standards are much better. Our security values are much better. Moral values, I would say, as an industry and as a white hat community. We're far more united and far more cohesive and far more cooperative than our peers in the rest of the world. We are superior. We are the Spartans of cybersecurity today. And we're a whole industry of them. And it's amazing. We have a difficult task in front of us, but we have a path to success. And that path to success will lead us to create effectively unhackable code. Okay. And then that's going to be a world where it's just us and the ballistic missile technology makers of the world, the nuclear missile technology people of the world, who are basically sitting on absolute foolproof secure code. And in that world of secure code, it is inevitable that the rest of finance and the market economy will join us join our infrastructure and our substrate, because it will be so much more superior. So, you know, we're in a difficult spot. Yes, we have challenges that we need to deal with, Andrew, but they're challenges that we can win. And the prize of victory will be to take a central place in the global economy of the future. So I'm pretty stoked about it. And not only that, if we do win, we're going to export all these technologies and all these techniques that we create here for crypto. We're going to export them to the broader internet and make the rest of the internet safer too.
Excellent.
It's a big prize for us to win. Big prize. And we can do it.
Thanks a lot, Mitchell. Interesting. I have to go back and do some research on everything you've said, because it's quite, a whole other side of the world I never look at, but it's always in the news, this hack and that hack, this. So it's good that you believe that over time you think there's going to be a drop maybe or a baseline to it, kind of thing.
Absolutely. We are going towards it. Andrew, if I have my way, I will single-handedly create, bug-free code over the next 3 to 4 years. I can do it. I know what to do, and I'm not the only person who's figured it out. So I think one way or another we can get to that destination.
Nice.
If we survive.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Mitchell.